Hello, and welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
And I'm Charles Rogers. And welcome to the second to last episode of our Bad Batch coverage. We're almost done.
Almost there. We're getting there. We're 16 episodes later, 17 episodes later now because of the episode 0. So we're almost to the end.
I've devoted most of my summer to this, and frankly, that works for Hot Boy Summer for me. Yep. We had a few Hot Boys in this. We had Roland and Hunter, and Crosshair if I'm feeling kind of saucy and hate myself.
If you hate yourself, you want to pity fuck.
Everybody gets in those moods occasionally, Bradley, especially once you turn my age.
I think Crosshair is more of like an ex you like want to fuck because you know the sex is good, so you go back. Oh God, that's what it is.
Speaking as somebody who has fucked an ex because the sex was good, I can tell you that Crosshair 100% does have that energy.
Oh yeah,
and I hate that you've said that because of how right you are.
It's so true. I feel like actually now that I think about it, every member of the Bad Batch is an ex that you've had for different reasons. So I'm not going to get into what each one is, but they're all different. They're the X Batch, and they're all different boyfriends that you should stay away from for certain reasons. But Crosshair is the toxic ex that you go back to because the sex was so good because he's a long ass rifle. So
he's of all of the numbers that you have in your phone, he's not the one that you text the most, but he's the one you text the most at 3 a.m.
That's absolutely correct.
He gets the you up texts, and he's always getting them. He's never the one sending them.
No.
Before we dive into the episode, because I want to jump into this one because there's a lot to dissect here. I just want to address real fast. Nothing really happened in Star Wars news that we need to pontificate on. Mm-hmm. But Pablo Hidalgo on Twitter did answer one of our multi-episode questions. So 2 episodes ago, we were talking about the TK numbers.
Yes.
And we actually made a TikTok about how we don't understand what the TK numbers are.
Yes.
Pablo Hidalgo on Twitter, somebody asked him, and he confirmed that nobody has any fucking idea what the TK numbers stand for. If there's something, he's never heard of it. Apparently, they were called like TX numbers in early versions of the script.
Okay.
But, or the script for Star Wars, but like it doesn't mean anything. There's no designation.
So do we need to call George? Like George? Like
we do need to call George. We need to call up. Let me get on my cell phone and call George and see if we can find out.
Now.
Let me call my sugar daddy and see if he knows. So that answers that question from a few episodes ago. There is no answer.
Okay, good to know that nobody in Lucasfilm decided to figure this out.
The people whose job it is to know these things literally do not know.
That's hilarious.
All right, let's dive into the episode. The final episode of season 1 of The Bad Batch. Bradley, what did you think of this episode?
Positive. I liked, there was a lot of fucking character just in between like Hunter and Crosshair and just Omega and everybody. Like everybody just had like all these character moments that were just really just developing. Like it was just really good. Like it's like, I'm your brother, I'm not your brother, I'm your friend, I'm not your friend, I'm your sister, I'm not your sister. There was just so many different like things there that were going on. It was very complicated, but I enjoyed it. My only critique was maybe it's just because I was watching this early in the morning and this is just how my TV in my living room is, but the episode was so fucking dark. Like I was having trouble seeing what was going on half the time. So maybe I was gonna say, just maybe I need to like adjust how I watch these. Maybe I just need to watch these in like pitch black rooms so that I can like appreciate it. But
it's not just you. I remember some people talking on Twitter. Some of the creators were talking about how this one is best enjoyed in a dark room on a computer screen. I watched it twice. I watched it the first time I watched it on my computer screen at midnight, and then when I was watching it on the train, words. When I was watching it on the train to take notes on my phone on the way home from work today, I was watching it on my phone, and had I not watched it on my computer first, there was points it would have been very difficult to tell what was going on in the episode.
Yeah, I was like watching it like, did they do this on purpose? Was this a thing? And I was like, and then I thought about it and I was like, well, I mean, I guess there's no fucking power on this in this fucking city, so I guess it makes sense that it's dark. But at the same time, I was like, come on, they can't like cheat light somehow, like be like, oh, we all have flashlights and it lights up the room or something.
They do it at certain points. They do it in the tunnel thing. They do it with the clone pods when that scene. So,
and actually, I was gonna say one of the only moments that was I have an issue with was the very end, and when we get to it, I'll explain why I had an issue with it. But it was the lightest scene in the whole entire episode.
Oh, I think I know what scene you're talking about.
Okay, good.
I have the same note. Oh, I have a note about what I think you're going to gripe about.
Okay, cool.
I really loved it. So when I first watched it, last night, it was a beautiful episode. It was a lot of fun. I was really underwhelmed by it as a season finale. And I kind of had to marinate and watch it again. And there was a point that I hit in rewatching it where I went, oh, this is a disaster movie. What they've done is last episode, we had the confrontation between Hunter and Crosshair. But what they've done is they've taken the bit like with Callus and Zeb on the Ice Moon in Rebels. They've done the bit where the two groups have to work together to get out of the situation that's bigger than either of them. And they've taken it and made it the big emotional, quote unquote, confrontation between the two.
Right.
So they've done this twist on what we expect by setting it in a disaster scenario as opposed to just a straight up fight that we all kind of expected.
I agree.
So speaking of said disaster, we open with the ships still bombing the hell out of Kamino. Kamino is the Tapoka city is collapsing into the water. And I have a note here that it really has just gone like full Titanic at this point.
Well, I will say too that these shots of the city, quote unquote, exploding or like the lasers or whatever blowing it up were so gorgeous. I mean, destruction was beautiful.
That's
like,
my next note. It's dying. Kamino dying is so pretty.
Right. It's gorgeous. Like the animation, they were like, well, we have the rest of the budget, so let's use it.
Let's blow the budget. It's one of those things where they have to spend their whole budget.
Yeah, I love it.
So that they don't get less money next season.
Exactly.
So they threw it all in, and it shows. It's absolutely gorgeous. You know what it really reminded me of, though? So there's a movie that I saw in the mid 2000s when I was a teenager, mid to late 2000s when I was a teenager. That was a remake of an older movie, and the new movie was called Poseidon. The old movie was called The Poseidon Adventure. But Poseidon was about a cruise ship that gets hit with a rogue wave and capsizes. And the gist of it is that they have to escape because the majority of the ship is underwater.
I think I've seen that movie.
This reminded me a lot of that movie.
Okay, because they're submerged underwater, but they're like still able to breathe somehow because it's like sealed off.
Their whole goal is to get out of the thing that's under the water,
right? Which
I thought was it was just a reference that I got that I wanted to bring up. I haven't watched this movie in 20 years, but
gotcha. No, the whole movie did feel very Titanic. The whole episode did feel very Titanic, though. Like, it was very much the last act of Titanic. Like, it was very like, we have to escape the water. Like, every time we go up the water's catching up with us, so it's like we have to continuously get to the top of wherever we're going.
And everything's sinking and breaking, and the water is gushing
Right.
in. Back up on the ship. So the Bad Batch is running along. Before we get into that, so the Bad Batch is running along, and they end up getting separated. So a door slams shut between them. We cut back up to the Venator, and the camera kind of sweeps over the clones that are working on the bridge. Now, there's a small detail in the last episode and again in this episode. I'm taking the fact that it showed up for like literally a second in this episode as an excuse to bring it up because I didn't talk about it last time. But someone pointed out that the clones are wearing patches. And apparently, I haven't double checked this, but apparently the patch denotes those clones as having been formerly part of the 212th and the 501st Joint Fleet. So those clones worked for Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Oh, weird. Okay.
That those are probably the Venator ships. He might be on the Negotiator, honestly.
Oh, that's the main one that they're on, right?
That's Obi-Wan's ship is called
Got
the Negotiator. I forget what Anakin's ship is called, but that was like, oh, that was a nice little detail that I wanted to bring up. Then we get this clone that walks up to Rampart and he's delivering the report of like Kamino or Topoka City rather has been destroyed. And man, you could hear this clone is having a bad day. But what's interesting is if the chips are really working, like full on working, you shouldn't. Your ordinary run-of-the-mill clone shouldn't be feeling this overwhelming wave of emotion at watching his home get destroyed.
Right, because they don't care.
So I thought that was an interesting conversation they had. Rampart pulls the ships out. And I want to talk about the sound design here because we're going to spend multiple shots with the city sinking.
Right.
David Collins, I think is the guy's name, who is the sound designer on Bad Batch. And he was also the sound designer on Force Unleashed, which is, I think, why he likes to use the Imperial klaxon so much. He said that he designed the sound of Kamino falling to literally almost feel like something massive dying. He likened it to a dying whale sinking down.
Sounds about right.
So I thought that was neat.
Yeah, that's what it kind of sounded like.
These are all little details, but they all come together to make these final 3 episodes of something. So I have a note here. Crosshair wakes up and AZ is like, congratulations. You are not dead, but you are about to drown.
Right.
Like, AZ, you're a medical droid. Do you have bedside manner or not?
I mean, he kind of does and he kind of doesn't. Like, he's very, like, matter of fact, which I guess if you think about it, though, as a medical droid would be good because you don't want them to, like, skirt around the problem, right? Like, be like, hey, by the way, your leg is being cut off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they want you, they're just going to tell you, like, whatever it is.
Yeah, I did find it, like, a bit jarring that he was so, like, direct with it, but I guess that does, like, track and make sense.
Well, I also think it's part of just the comedy. Like, it's just he's so dry with his delivery. He's just very much true. Like, you know, here you go. Like,
this is a children's show for children as much as it does not seem like it sometimes.
Right.
What with the war crimes and the violence and the crime and the drugs.
Right.
I did want to note, so Omega's hair when they're underwater.
Oh, I love when her hair gets wet.
So when she's underwater, it like actually like stands up, like it waves through the water in clumps. And I just love that. And then it flattens down onto her head.
Right.
Because I think that I don't think we've seen hair move like that underwater before in a Star Wars animated property. I
Well,
think that's
I love when she comes up. It happened in the last episode when it was raining on them.
mhm.
Her hair when it's wet, it literally like is heavier, so it looks longer.
Yep.
So it like goes like she gets bangs or something. Like it's I don't know. It's really like I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
Yes. The I'm trying to think because I know they did wet hair in Resistance, but I don't think it moved around at
Interesting.
all. Because I specifically remember the wet hair because that is my favorite Kaz is Kaz when he has his hair matted down like that. That's just a personal feeling I have. But if we get into Resistance, we'll be here all day.
Um, so also stuck on hair right now. I also think that like, moving forward, if they ever do some kind of, passage of time or something or time jump, they're going to have Omega have long hair. And I feel like that's just well, one to show character development slash uh time passage, but also I feel like I want to see her with long hair. I feel like that's like her future. I need to see her with like long flowing hair, like a warrior, like whatever she is. Like I want to see that, like She-Ra, like
She-Ra Omega.
yes.
I was going to say this at the end, but I'll jump into it now. So my theory is actually based on the way this ends that we're looking at a year time jump.
Yeah.
A year time jump.
I 100%
after
agree.
this season.
Yeah.
So Omega, like, they're trying to save Crosshair. She hops up and she's like, AZ, use the boost. I'm going to try to free him. And then just start shooting the thing with the light bow. And like actually lands the hits. And then she tosses the light bow away, which infuriated me.
Like, I don't need this anymore.
She tosses it aside and like dives in. And I'm like, you couldn't have put it back on your belt. But
well, it brings up a question too. So it works, the laser or whatever works in the water. So why does she not just bring it underwater with her, like, and shoot it up close range? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't it not do the same thing if it's just an energy thing? Like,
because water is weightless, and so it's different. The feel of everything is different, and she's not going to have the necessary training with the light bow to be able to aim properly. She needed to get up on solid ground where gravity was expected for her.
Gotcha.
So that she could correctly aim it. Since we have seen that lasers, we've seen as far back as the Clone Wars that lasers do work underwater.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the modified weapons to do it. Like I think in Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan's lightsaber, like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't short out. I know it shorts out in the Lego games, the Lego Star Wars games, but I can't remember if it shorted out in like a novelization or something. I vaguely remember it briefly shorting out.
The only thing I can think of, like, where a lightsaber didn't quote unquote work was when Anakin was in the in Attack of the Clones, where his arm gets stuck in the machine thing with his lightsaber, and then when he goes to use it, it's broken, like it gets like chopped in half or something.
Maybe I'm confusing those things, but that is a valid point. But she does successfully use it to free Crosshair. He and then they get the door open. Him and Hunter kind of snark at each other for a little bit. I didn't note anything between this exchange, but they start running through the facility. And Omega looks down and sees the clone pods as they're sinking. And I like that this kind of caused her to stop. And then I also liked it was Wrecker that was the one that was like, we need to go. Like, yeah, come on, we need to go.
Well, my question was like, girl, the thing is sinking to the bottom of the ocean, and we don't know how deep this ocean is because the whole planet's a fucking ocean. So it's like, why are you stopping? Like, go, please, keep moving.
I mean, clearly the ocean is not that deep because spoilers, they managed to actually get out of it.
That's true.
So it's not like Mariana Trench deep.
Right. But it's deep enough. I mean, to sink
it's deep enough that it's a problem to sink the whole city completely. But
right.
I did like that it was Ricker, though, that was one that told her that, because he's always been the one that's been the most able to empathize with her. I think Echo can sympathize with her the most, but Wrecker, I think, most understands and is conscious of the fact that she is like a young girl.
Right.
And it was pointed out, I was listening to, I can't remember what I was listening to that brought this up, that Wrecker's the one to most throughout the series whenever the talk is like getting a little too spicy, to be the one to be like, guys, there's a child.
Right.
You need to be careful what you say in front of the child. Uh, so there's another sequence where the thing like tilts over to the side and they start kind of sliding down. Omega actually saves AZ. I bring this up because it's going to come up later.
Right.
That she like grabs AZ. Like she's barely hanging on and she like still jumps down and like tries to grab him. This was incidentally the point in my second watch through that I determined that this was actually a disaster movie and started enjoying it a whole lot more.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is this scene too, where you said that it literally tilts over, is just like theoretically like Titanic, where the boat goes straight up for one, little minute or so before it breaks in half, when it's like kind of slowly sinking down and everybody's falling down into the water. It
Yep.
like reminded me of that part because they were kind of like slow. It was slowly tilting and they slowly started falling and they had to grab onto stuff so they wouldn't fall all the way down.
Yeah, which I think later research has actually determined that the way that it breaks in the Titanic movie, like they thought that was the way it broke at the time, but
Yeah.
fun fact, they have determined that it might have actually, I think, broken differently.
Yeah.
So fun fact, if you want to go back and watch Titanic, be cognizant of the fact that when the ship breaks, it probably broke below the water and not above the water. There's your fun Titanic fact for the day.
Well, my headcanon for what happened in the
Your
historical
headcanon for
event.
History.
My
headcanon
headcanon
for history.
Right. Is going to be whatever happened in the movie happened in real life. So that's what I'm going to stick with because
Bradley,
I have no other frame of reference.
I would tell you that you can't just headcanon history, but in reality, that is what most people do anyway.
I mean, have you ever been into a Georgia U.S. history class? Like, it's basically all headcanon for the South.
I have actually, and you are 100% right about that.
So what's the difference?
It is basically our headcanon of what happened.
Exactly.
But here in the Bad Batch, the thing kind of writes itself, and Hunter basically tells Crosshair, you want to stay here? You can stay here. Whatever, we're leaving. Crosshair does kind of stand there for a minute, and there's like a moment where Omega like looks back at him and he's standing there alone. And then he follows them. It was a really nice moment, but I'm not sure what it means.
I mean, I'm not trying to analyze it too much because it's like, I mean, it's not like he can literally think about it. Like, it's like, okay, I have to go with you anyway. Like, there's no like, I'll just stay here and drown. Like, there's not really a choice to be made. He's not really like, he has no choice. Like, there's not an actual like, well, you can stay if you want. He just kind of said that. I don't know if he actually meant that.
Maybe it's to highlight the distance between him and the Batch, and maybe it's like, oh, the Batch will abandon me again. Like maybe that's what's going on.
Right.
They run to the barracks because of all the fucking rooms in Kamino to be able to be fine. Obviously, it's the one that has the most symbolic resonance so that Crosshair and Hunter can have their argument about whether or not Hunter is a good leader. And here's where we get into some of the actual really meaty back and forth because they have an exchange where Crosshair's like, good soldiers follow orders. And Hunter's like, if your orders are endangering you and wrong, you should question them, particularly if you're a leader,
right? And
you're responsible for people, then you need to protect your squad who you're responsible for. it is kind of hilarious that these two keep stopping to debate their respective philosophies, but I'm also kind of glad that it's happening.
I mean, when else are they gonna find time to fight with each other? I mean, they're like about to die, so it's like you might as well
Get
do
it
it
all out
now.
of your system now.
That's right. Exactly.
And Omega's like, "Oh, I have a plan to get us out of here." And Crosshair's like, "Are we letting the child make the plans now?
Yeah.
Is this a thing?" And I have in my notes, Crosshair can shut the fuck up about Omega, thank you.
Well, it's true because like on if you look at it from the outside perspective, because Crosshair is an outside perspective because he hasn't spent any time with them, he doesn't realize what she's capable of because he hasn't spent any time with her. And they've spent, we'll call it a few months together. Like, I mean, or weeks. I really don't know the timeline of the
Months,
show.
I would say, probably months.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars is very cagey with timeline anyway.
Hello, Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
We
So
see you there,
we'll just
being a
say
thorn in everyone's side.
we'll just call it a few months. We'll say 2 months. I think that's a fair
I think
like
that's reasonable. I'd say
that's a
this has
fair.
taken place over about, I'd say, 2 or 3 months.
You have to think that like, once the Empire took over, like obviously not everything's gonna be like wrapped up in a bow within a week after, the Empire takes over. So like, yeah, give it a few months. Like, we're still working the kinks out.
19 years later, they're still
Still
working the
working the
kinks
kinks.
out. We'll
Well,
get it. We'll get it any day now, guys. Any day now. We're totally gonna come. They're like a shitty, terrible landlord that's like, I will totally come by and fix your leaking toilet every day for the entire duration of your tenancy, and then they never do it. There's a plan to take the tunnel that we saw in the last episode to manually walk through it. And AZ can get them down into it. Now, AZ does this by cutting through the floor. The cut that he makes is like at least 3 to 4 feet. So, my question is, AZ, my dude, what are your capabilities exactly? Because you can weld through what looks like 3 or 4 feet of solid Durasteel.
yeah.
And later on, you're going to transfer enough power into the thing to like shock a giant fish. Like, dude, are you sure you're a medical droid?
Is he a medical droid?
He's a medical droid. He's the most hyper competent doctor I've ever met.
Well, clearly he can also operate on droids if he can weld through 4 feet of metal. So clearly he's both a droid doctor and a regular doctor because otherwise, why else would he need to have a giant welding torch on his fucking body?
AZ's gonna just like pull random weapons and tools just completely at random. Like, oh yeah, you know what he is? He's like if an R2 unit decided to sober up and go to medical school.
Yes, that's exactly what he's Inspector Dr. Gadget AZI.
He's Dr. Gadget. I love it. But he drills through the floor and they start walking. And Crosshair notices that the thing is cracking and is like, we need to go back. And Wrecker's like, you need to shove your entire foot up your ass until it knocks your teeth out. And Crosshair's like, excuse me, do you have something to say to me? And Wrecker delivers this lovely thing about if you, and Wrecker, bless him, this is an episode of good points. Wrecker, bless him, says, if you had even tried to come back to us, we would have taken you back.
Right.
And Crosshair's like, get fucked. Tech swoops in and is like, it's in his nature. You're not going to reason with him. Crosshair's like, why are you defending me? And I have this noted as the best line in the episode, maybe the best line in the entire series so far. Understanding you does not mean I agree with you.
Right. And it's funny too because that has like double meaning too because on the one hand it's Tech just being like it's just getting Tech's side of the story basically, but it's also like Tech's analytical mind being like, I don't have like the emotion behind it. It's very much like, no, I don't agree with anything you're doing, but I understand why you're doing it. Therefore, I can like rationalize what you're doing.
It's almost like this line tells us so much about Tech, because Tech has seemed so emotionally distant and like he doesn't really, like he's purely analytical the entire show. And just this one line, we demonstrate that he's able to separate his analysis of a given situation from his emotion on a given situation. And I feel like that's something that everyone, when it comes to a lot of things, needs to learn how to do. If there's one lesson really to be taken away from this whole thing, it's that you can endeavor to understand something while not agreeing with it. And just because you understand something does not obligate you to agree with it.
Right.
I love this. And I think it's an important lesson too, in like when we're looking at media criticism and fan culture. Like, I bring up my intense, burning, passionate hatred for The Force Unleashed all the time. I understand why people like The Force Unleashed. I understand very clearly why people like this game. I do not myself like this game, but I understand why people do, and I'm not going to take that away from them. I understand their point of view. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. And I think when we're looking at something like the Star Wars franchise maturely as adults, and we're looking at different points of view, and we're saying, I see what you're saying, even if I don't agree with it. So I think it's a lesson that we as Star Wars fans too really can take to heart and internalize. We fucking won't, but we should. It's just such a good line, and I'm hoping that next season we do get more Tech and we get more Echo.
Yeah.
But I do like that between the Darrow episode with Echo and this one with this line from Tech and kind of what's been through the last 4 episodes with Tech, they are kind of exploring them. We have that shot. The fucking lighting in this show.
I mean, I even like when AZ's eyes are illuminated as flashlights. Like, that's, to me, that even is like cool. Like, I don't know. It's like an excuse to have a flashlight without having a flashlight.
Thinking of how kind of the way animation has evolved, and like thinking about Clone Wars to Rebels to Resistance to now, the lighting has been probably the thing that has absolutely just leaps and bounds from beginning to end. They've done amazing things with this engine that they're using, whatever engine they're using to light this. So they escape the tube. AZ kind of shocks the thing and it goes away. And then AZ's like, well, we shorted out power to the thing, but this outcome is satisfactory. They get up there, but oh no, the tube leading to the platform is broken. So they're going to need a new plan. Hunter and Crosshair get into it again over the Empire, service to the Empire. Crosshair arguing the Empire does what needs to be done. Hunter's like, are you kidding me? And finally, Hunter tells him, all you'll ever be is just a number to them. And Crosshair's like, fuck you, and walks away. And Omega follows him. And this is where I've noted very specifically, Omega demonstrates through this episode, she is like obsessed with saving people. She cannot let people go.
Yeah, she catches
She catches AZ at risk to herself. She tries to go reason with Crosshair when any normal person would just leave him. And later on, we're going to see that she does something very stupid in the name of saving a droid. which I'll remind you in this universe are not considered on the same level of people.
Yeah, what class of droid is AZ?
That's an excellent question. I think an AZI dash whatever. You're gonna look up what that is.
Well, yeah, because it isn't like I need to know like the difference between like, for example, what oh my god, his fucking Wikipedia page is AZI 3452118962464987213447.
That's his fucking name, Bradley.
I know, but why is it so long? It's fucking hilarious.
That's the joke.
He is a surgical assistant droid, by the way. So that's why he has a
no fucking bedside manner
welder as his arm. But that's why he has.
What is he performing surgery on? Is he performing surgery on like fucking the whale things? Like,
I don't know.
Is he performing surgery on a fucking Star Destroyer? Like, what?
Yeah, and he's just it doesn't really say. It just says medical class, which I guess is a different. I mean, obviously, like there's mechanics and whatever, but I don't see like where it says. You know how like they have certain classes, like some of them are smarter than others, and there's a distinguishing number for that.
I couldn't tell you.
Anyway, moving on.
In the course of this conversation between Omega and Crosshair, Omega explicitly reveals what her tragic backstory is, that she never left the lab, and her getting to interact with the Bad Batch and seeing their mutations enhanced was the first time she'd really seen somebody else, that she spent so much time alone down in the lab. And that's why she was so obsessed with finding them in episode 1. And Crosshair's like, just because they're mutated does not make you one of them. Because Crosshair has this whole like supremacist thing going to where some people are simply superior to others, which will serve him very well in the Empire because they're all fucking Nazis.
Well, and even what she says to him is literally like she says what everybody else wanted to say this whole time, which was, I wanted to believe that it was the invertership, but no, you're just an asshole.
She just out and out says this, just comes straight out and is like, no, you're a dick, actually. Yeah. Fuck you. And like, she just gets up and walks away.
Yeah.
Finally, she's starting to grow up. So they decide what they're going to do. They come up with a plan. What they're going to do is they're going to load everybody into the medical pods in the lab. And they're going to shoot them up through the water. And this is not a bad plan, actually. I have noted, as far as plans they have come up with in the show, this one is not awful. But there is a complication, which is the debris field.
Right.
And I like that it's Crosshair is the one to point out the obvious. There's this running theme throughout the episode of Crosshair saying he wants nothing to do with them and then helping.
Yeah, he's like very subtly helping.
It's a very Din Djarin kind of, I'm going to say no, but I'm going to do the thing anyway.
Right, he says the plan is, do it, yeah.
Right. He says the plan is stupid, but he contributes anyway.
Right.
He doesn't give a shit about AZI or Omega, but he still saves them.
Like, and can we talk about the pairing in the tubes? Because it's very important that we talk about the pairing in the tubes.
It is extremely important that we discuss who gets crammed into a tube with who.
Because, okay, let's start with Wrecker. Obviously, that makes sense. He's really big and buff. He needs his own. Okay, that I can accept that one. Tech and Echo are in one together because they're the smallest. That makes sense. Hunter and Crosshair are together for plot reasons, like just because they hate each other, so that's why they're together. And then Omega gets her own tube. She's the smallest one. That makes no sense.
Yeah, because I was gonna say maybe they don't want to leave Crosshair by himself, which is why they don't put Hunter in the tube with Omega.
That's what I thought the pairing.
That being the case, you could just put Tech or Echo in the tube with, maybe it's a buoyancy thing. Like
maybe
Crosshair and Hunter are roughly the same weight. like if Hunter was in the pod with Omega, it might tilt to the side. It would list, and there wouldn't be a way.
I don't know. I don't like it.
I mean, we're doing that thing that Star Wars fans have to do, where you rationalize the weird thing that happened in the thing,
right,
by coming up with some ridiculous fan explanation for why this works. No, Palpatine was back because of cloning. Actually, I'm not going to get on that because they do say how he came back in Rise of Skywalker, but
I was going to say, we can say that for the end of this episode. So.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, well, we can get into that too. I loved how AZI was like, barring any extraneous complications, we should be fine. And I immediately went, there are going to be extraneous complications, aren't there?
I mean, I like how he says that, like, as a plot device, like, well, just in case. But, like, we know that that's what's going to happen, so it doesn't make any sense. Now, did you know who it was going to happen to, though?
I knew that that AZI was almost certainly going to run out of battery because they kept running it home. And the second Omega was like, you can do it, I was like, oh, yeah, this is about where it's about to happen.
Gotcha.
He's about to run out. What did I say about plans during our Rescue from Ryloth episode? I said, if they explain the plan and then do the plan will go wrong.
Right.
But if they explain the plan and show you them doing the plan at the same time, it has worked.
Right.
And just calling back to our Rescue from Ryloth episode.
The rules still work.
The rules still work. They get in the pods. They blow the lab. The pods launch up. AZ is like darting around and moving them around the debris, which is actually a really awesome sequence. Did you notice the music that started playing when his power started failing?
It was the same music that played when Padme died in Attack of the Clones.
No.
Or Revenge of the Sith or whatever. I'm just kidding.
No, it was... So it wasn't the exact same music as Phantom Menace, but it was very in line with it.
Interesting.
The music that plays when they're descending in the bongo. I think it's called a bongo. The do, that bit. It's very reminiscent of that. And I specifically noted that.
Interesting.
I don't know whether that was intentional on Kevin Kiner's part, but that's what that reminded me of when they were in the water. AZ gets a tragic death scene. It's very sad. I cry many tears.
I was like, how are you guys going to bring him back just to have him die again?
I was so mad. I was like, we suspected someone was going to die this episode, but you're really going to have it be fucking AZ, who was gone for most of the series, and then you bring him back to heroically sacrifice yourself.
Exactly. And it was so dramatic too, the shots, because they were so far, like they zoomed out so far away when you could see him pushing Omega up in the tube, and you were like, oh, he's gonna lose power and die, and then like slowly really sink to the bottom of the ocean. Like I was like, oh my god, this is so fucking sad. It's not even funny.
He like ran around collecting every death flag and was holding them up like, hello, I have collected the flags. I have been helpful. Look at me. Why are you all staring at me with looks of transfixed horror?
Also, I want to know how deep they are, because Omega opens up the tube and she gets out into so the pressure of the water, like I don't understand like how deep they are, because if you are depressurizing the tube that you're in and then you're going into the water, like she would die.
They never depressurize the tube.
Right.
So they're not deep enough that depressurization has to come into it. She would probably be very uncomfortable. So her ears would almost certainly be experiencing pressure, but I don't think she'd be deep enough. Speaking of Omega, she once again decides to throw caution into the wind to try to save somebody, which
is not a human.
This is her character flaw.
Yeah.
That she is almost pathologically unable to let people go or give up on people.
Right.
We start to see hints that she might be growing out of this with her conversation with Crosshair, but for the most part, she cannot let people go. Who else do we know couldn't let people go?
Anakin Skywalker could not let anybody he loved die.
And how did that turn out for Anakin Skywalker?
He turned into an evil, force-wielding, yellow-eyed monster.
And how do we think this is going to go for Omega?
She's going to turn into a baby Crosshair. She's going to shave her head, and she's going to be evil.
I did actually see back when episode 7 aired, and she said that she didn't have an inhibitor chip. Somebody did fan art of what she would actually look like if she did have an inhibitor chip and it activated. And she's like got this evil, like wide-eyed slasher look, and she's saying good soldiers follow orders.
Oh, God.
And wielding the light bow, and it was horrifying to look at. I don't want to think about evil Omega, but I'm just saying she has a character flaw. She fears to lose people. And fear, as we know, leads to anger. And anger leads to hate. And hate leads to creating a Twitter account.
Right.
So, but Crosshair successfully saves them by pulling out his sniper rifle and firing it. He looks like he's going to fire it at Hunter, and then he fires it down in the water. Did it occur to you to ask where the sniper rifle came from?
No, I just kind of said he keeps it, in his like pants or something. Like, he's got a lot of space in there.
My first thought was Crosshair is the king of the bottoms, because God knows where he was storing this thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
and if he was, this man puts every bottom to shame. Like, I'm sorry, guys, your king has arrived. This is who your God is now. But upon watching the sequence, I actually did notice where he got it from. All the way back in the last episode, I noted in my brain, but did not write down, that Hunter put something on his back right before they
Hunter
leave.
had it the whole time.
Hunter had it on his back the whole time, and you can see Crosshair pull it off of Hunter's back.
Got it.
Because it looks like he's taking the moment to take out Hunter.
Right.
He doesn't. He saves them. So he successfully rescues them. Everybody lives. They're like, we need to paddle to the Marauder. And then we get the shot that I think Bradley is going to complain about.
Okay, this is the one thing that bothered me in the whole entire episode, and it was the only time I actually could see what I was seeing in the episode.
And that is the sun rises on Kamino.
So I have two issues with this. My only explanation was that the Kaminoans were polluting the environment so poorly, they were causing an everlasting hurricane on the planet. And then when the Empire destroyed the city, all the pollution stopped, and then the ocean just decided, okay, no more hurricane. And then that's what happened. That's my headcanon, I guess, because I don't understand it. I thought this place was in a forever perpetual hurricane, like a thunderstorm or whatever.
I also thought that. I thought it was a planet, up until this point, it has been a planet of endless storms.
Right.
And it's never not been storming on Kamino. So my thought was maybe they're doing something funky to the environment where they're drawing energy from it that's constantly keeping it in a state of imbalance, and destroying the city restored balance to the force. But how?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know if that. I like that explanation, but I also don't get it.
Well, I love the shot. It's a beautiful shot.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say that my explanation for the storm or the perpetual storm was that okay, clearly the whole planet is an ocean, right? There's no land mass that we know of.
Yes, because
And
this is Star Wars and you're only allowed to have one biome per planet.
right, exactly.
But then, like, why does it stop storming it long enough for them to have a thematic
I mean,
moment?
I didn't know. I can't explain that part. I'm just saying before this happened, the storm made sense. Like I believe, like okay, there's a reason why it's happening. Now that makes no sense to me because now there's no storm. So I'm like, what the fuck?
I always read it as the Kaminoans were like either
Doing
it was
something.
their home base or
Yeah.
they like specifically picked the planet because it would be difficult to attack. They knew they were going to be building an army. They wouldn't want their facilities to come under attack. They picked the planet specifically, but now I'm like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, because if this is the case, like if there's clear sunny days on this fucking planet where the ocean is so calm that it's flat, that makes no sense, by the way. Then this would be the perfect planet to attack because the sky is clear, the ocean is not crazy. Like all I'd have to do is look for your city on the planet and I can attack you. So I don't understand.
we have now spent 2 or 3 minutes purely confused over the fact that a Star Wars planet can have more than one
Type of
weather
weather.
pattern.
That's unheard of.
It's absolutely unheard of in this universe. As we know, planets have one biome
Yes.
unless they are Kessel. Kessel is allowed to have two to make a poignant point, but your weather is always the same.
Always.
Your planets look exactly the same. Nothing changes at all. No, it's a beautiful shot, even if it makes no goddamn sense.
Right.
It is a really beautiful shot. And we have some nice conversation here. Hunter and Crosshair, so Crosshair elects to stay. He's not going to go with them.
Right.
But him and Hunter, I don't want to say they've buried the hatchet because they haven't. But I raised the point with somebody earlier today. I was like, what it feels like is it's a chapter in their relationship is closing when Hunter is like, look, Hunter acknowledges that they want different things and they're going to go different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But he also acknowledges that doesn't mean they have to be enemies. When you have a family member like that you're estranged from, it's a very painful feeling to acknowledge that somebody that you've spent years and years and years with is going on a different path than you, particularly if it's a path that you don't agree with. It's one of the most heartbreaking things you have to endure as a human person. And part of learning to reconcile that is this ability to say, we are just on different directions in our lives. That doesn't mean we hate each other. That just means we're in different places. And this really resonated with me. And then Omega's line a little bit later, and actually the
Final
last
line. Yeah.
Not the final line of the episode, but the final line of the main story where she says, reaffirms, you're still their brother, Crosshair. You're my brother too. Like, that hit me. That whole exchange hit me. This scene hit me, and I am not okay.
Yeah. I was going to say, I almost feel cheated a little because I feel like this should have been the final thing that we see, not the next little scene. I felt like that the next little scene should have happened 2 episodes ago. When
I actually forgot that the next scene exists on my second watch through, because the shot of Crosshair standing alone on the platform as the Marauder flies away was a beautiful shot to end on.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, incredible, 10 out of 10. Then they should have gone to credits. They should have done the credits, and this should have been a post-credit scene.
There you go. Yeah, I don't like that it was included in the episode because I feel like it I don't want to say cheapened the ending, but it just felt out of place.
It felt out of place, and it didn't quite reveal enough, I felt, to justify its presence in the episode. Like, if if she had come out, if they had explicitly identified what planet they're on, which we'll
Right.
get to what that might be in a minute. But if they'd explicitly identified it as a major lore drop tease, or they had had some character show up in the final minutes, the way Vader showed up at the end of Rebels season 1,
Mm-hmm.
then it would have felt like a proper like epilogue that needed to be included in the body of the episode. As it stands, this would have been a great end credit scene.
Well, I was thinking too. So in this scene, a woman, a scientist woman or whatever, with the
Yes.
glasses, she comes up to Nala Se and she talks to her or whatever. I noted that the outfit she was wearing is the same outfit that Dr. Pershing is wearing in The Mandalorian season 1.
Absolutely. Yep. Season 1 and season 2, Pershing's outfit
Right.
is the same, which is the first time we've seen it in animation.
So I felt like if they were going to include this scene, that character should have been Dr. Pershing coming up to Nala Se, not this random woman.
Dr. Pershing is probably being born right about now.
Oh, well, and then this is his mom.
I mean, maybe.
I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like it would have been a stronger if we knew who this person was. Like, and we needed to know who the person was coming to greet her.
Yes.
Or something. Like, that would have been a stronger
100%. If, like I said, if it had been something like Vader at the end of season 1 of Rebels, like if Nala Se had landed and there had been like the Empire has big plans for you, and it had been like, to pull someone completely out of my ass, if it had been like Gallius Rax from the Aftermath series, who we know was tight with the Emperor, or it was like one of the Emperor's advisors, or it was somebody that, assuming that this is leading into the Exegol stuff eventually down the line, or if it had been like a young Moff Gideon or something, that would have been worth having it be the stinger. As it stands, I had to do some digging and read some articles.
Gotcha.
To determine what might be going on in this scene.
And before we get into that real quick, I just want to note that I just pulled it up real quick just to time it. From the second it cuts to black till it says created by Dave Filoni, it's a whole 8 seconds of black, which makes no sense. Like, why did you leave that much space of like pause? Like, it wasn't like that dramatic. So I don't understand what, like, that could have been 8 seconds of something else. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like it if it had been some major shocker, like absolutely like just drop it, like just drop everything.
Yeah.
And that would have been good to have time to sink in, but nothing really happened in this scene.
Well, it also feels like that's where they could have put the season 2, teaser thing that they dropped 2 episodes ago. They could have put that in there. Like, as like, even though they already announced it, they could have still put that in the end. Been like season 2 coming 2021 or whatever. Like, they could have just stuck that in there.
You know who it should have been?
Baby Yoda.
It should have been Admiral Trench. Somehow Admiral Trench returned.
Why would that have anything to do with anything?
Because he just keeps coming back from the dead, Bradley.
Oh my God.
He just keeps coming back from the dead. His ship blows up and he's just randomly here again as a cyborg now. You cannot keep a spider. Have you tried to kill a spider, Bradley? It's really fucking hard.
It is really hard. As much as I would love to see a cyborg spider show up in live action for no fucking reason whatsoever, because it doesn't make sense with anything that's going on plot wise in any of the canon that's happening at any point in time that's current.
That's a reveal for me and no one else.
Maybe, you know what, he'll appear in the Ahsoka show in 3 years, and then you'll be happy.
I will be. Somehow Admiral Trench survived. I didn't do research because I didn't think to do research, but fortunately I read an article earlier today.
Okay.
Which is not from a clickbait site, which is from Cinelix, which is a site that actually does journalism, which is nice.
Like that.
But I was reading a speculation article on there, and they identified that the mountain that they're on, I had thought it might be Darrow. It wasn't. They identified that it might be a place called Mount Tantus. Mount Tantus in Legends factored into Heir to the Empire, and it was Palpatine, one of Palpatine's like strongholds, where he kept his dark secrets and he did his dark deeds. So there's some discussion that it might be Mount Tantus, and that Nullis A might be going to work directly on some shady shit that Palpatine wants to do that will tie into the Children of the Force arc from Clone Wars and into what Moff Gideon is trying to do in The Mandalorian, and eventually leads to what we see in Rise of Skywalker.
The only way I'm going to say I don't think that that's true is because the mountain was too beautiful. It didn't look evil enough. So I'm going to go with that can't be the place where all of his evil stuff is happening because it was too pretty. So
pretty things can be evil, Bradley. Have you ever met a nice, pretty gay man? Exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly. Here we go. So that wraps up the episode. I do want to do a few shout outs. I did look up who voices the medical officer. She's credited as medical officer. It's a woman named Helen Sadler. There doesn't seem to be anything special about this medical officer, but in researching Helen Sadler, I did discover that she has done a lot of voices for the series, or for Star Wars series and video games, rather. So she's one of the ones like Liam O'Brien and some of the others who have done multiple voices.
Right, like the background characters or whatever.
And that guy who voiced Lama Su, I can't remember his name. I think it started with a B. I don't remember it, but he also had shown up in a lot of different things throughout the years. So
gotcha.
Shout out to her for existing and being awesome and contributing to things we like. We give Dave Filoni a lot of credit on the show. But real fast at the end here as we roll the credits, I want to shout out Kevin Kiner, who does the music, and then Brad Rao, who's the supervising director, and Jennifer Corbett, who's the co-executive producer and co-developer.
Nice.
Just right here at the end of, we're going to do our retrospective. And when we do our retrospective, we're probably going to talk about the creators a lot. But right here at the back of the final episode, I want to shout out those people who we've been talking about a lot over the course of this show.
Right.
Bradley, do you have any final thoughts on this episode before I give mine?
Final thoughts is, like we kind of said a little bit before, I can't not see them doing a time jump. I just don't know where like this show can go from okay, it's only a week later, let's continue like what we were doing. Like, I don't think we're there. I think we're done, like you said, with Crosshair and Hunter's kind of like not beef squashed, but like they're just kind of done with the whole like I need to hunt you, you know what I mean? Or not hunt, because Crosshair doesn't hunt, but you know what I mean? Like we're done with that storyline to an extent. It'll be interesting to see where Crosshair ends up in the Empire, because he did say earlier, he goes, I'm going to be a part of this Empire and I'm going to be important, is what he said basically. And from what we know history wise,
that doesn't work out. That doesn't track.
Well, so I don't know what that's gonna happen, but we'll see.
I do know, once I realized what was going on in this episode, that they were kind of thrown together in this disaster. I do understand now why it tonally had to be split between last week's episode and this week's episode. Mm-hmm. I think that they do have to be kind of taken together, but at the same time, I understand why they did the split and let each one marinate on its own. I loved the episode. It wasn't my favorite. It's growing on me. It's kind of rising up the list, but it's not hitting the same levels as like War Mantle. Maybe I'll like it better. Maybe I'll like it better once I've. Yeah. once I've marathoned it all.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go from this to marathoning the whole thing just to see what it's like on a binge watch.
yeah, it might be different on the not the not the second view, but you know what I mean. Like the watching it as a whole might be a
Yeah.
different take on it. Yeah.
All right. So socials. We are on several different socials. We are on Twitter at Goldsquadrangays. I try to provide updates for our show, but also retweet when I can catch them new episodes of shows by other queer creators. So if you're interested in more podcasts by queer people that are like this one, definitely give us a follow over there. We also have our Instagram account, Goldsquadrongays, so at Goldsquadrongays. Bradley sometimes posts funny memes and sometimes posts direct personal attacks. So just gonna leave that one there.
That was a good one today.
I hate you so fucking much. We're also on TikTok. You can follow us at Goldsquadrongays on there. We animate clips from these episodes every week and post them there. So if you want to get a different take on what's going on over there, definitely give us a follow over on the TikTok. If you are enjoying the show, no matter what podcatcher you use, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review over there. It helps boost the algorithm. It helps us get seen by more people, so it would definitely be appreciated. And if it's particularly kind or particularly vicious, we may read it out loud on the air. And finally, you can find me personally on Twitch at CWRogers6. It's the same as my Twitter handle. We play Star Wars games every Monday, although we've been kind of on a hiatus the last few weeks. But we are finishing up Jedi Fallen Order, kind of deciding what we want to do next. So definitely come over and hang out. I also wanted to give a special thank you to Hope and Chris from Jedi Guys and Jedi for their lovely, lovely shout out of us on the podcast episode that dropped this week at time of recording this, which is the 13th of August. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Bradley, take us out so that I can start watching The Bad Batch again.
Thank you for joining us this week, and join us next week for another episode of Goldsquadrongays. I mean, I was going to take the pure emotional wrecker standpoint on that and say anybody who likes the video games of Star Wars is a fucking fuck fanboy, and they should all shut up. So none of their opinions matter.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see how you feel once we finally get you something that you can actually play Jedi Fallen Order on.
Unless they port it to Switch, I'm never going to play that game. So
we'll see if Ginger Twinks can change your mind.